Oh, there we are. There was no audio. Sorry. So thank you again for, and thank you, Simon. Thank you again for 15,000 subscribers. I was basically talking to myself now. But again, thank you very much. I'm going to reminisce for a bit about the past, well, 6 years or so, and what I've been doing and what I'm working towards, etc. If you have any questions, then I'll be happy to read your comments that are super chats in the end. So I'd like to take this opportunity, this live stream, actually, to introduce the rule that for some of these live streams, I will take super chats, and if you so desire, then you can support the work here by sending one and leave a comment or a question. I will get to those at the end, but these will be the only comments that I'll be reading. So, thank you all for being here. Thank you for subscribing. I hit, as they say, 15,000 on Saturday or Sunday this past weekend, and have been able to do so without tacky 10-minute summary videos of this is what Sartre means here, this is what Hegel says here. Wikipedia is good enough for that. I do try to put out either long, substantial lectures that, or even parts of stuff that I've written for conferences, etc. In an earlier life when I was still an academic, or when I still go to conferences. And of course, also publish videos that have to do with the courses that we offer at my Halcyon Academy. But now, what I was talking about before I was notified that my microphone was off was that I started this channel in 2018. I think in October or September of 2018, I published my first video that I recorded myself with a Canon camera that I could barely operate. And it took me quite long to figure out all these technical things. I think it's pretty okay now. Uh, and also which microphone to use. Didn't even have a microphone at the time. So, anyways, I recorded a first lecture on 2001: A Space Odyssey, of all films. And after I was at that time, this is October 2018, I was teaching at Birkbeck College, which is part of the University of London. And so I was teaching in the evenings, and sometimes started putting out videos on either, I recorded talks. For example, my friend Adam taught recorded one of my talks on boredom and Black Mirror and Nirvana and the film Network, which you can also find here on this channel. It's an early one, so this was actually professionally, more or less professionally filmed by Adam at the time. He's a photographer in London. And uh, I wanted to use this platform simply for recording talks that I had given, or lectures, stuff I was writing, things I was writing or working on that perhaps couldn't be published in an academic setting. But I also had the idea already at the time that I'd like to have my own academy at some point, which I don't know where that notion comes from. Maybe from reading too much Plato when I was younger, and Aristotle, with their own academy and lyceum, respectively. Who knows? But also, of course, the obvious issues that modern academia has, teaching becoming a teaching load, as they call it in the UK. It's a teaching load. It's something that's loaded off on you, and you've got to give students learning outcomes, and you turn your students are customers, and you sell a product or a service to them, and the service is daycare. And I was so that the idea was, at some point the idea became to use the platform of YouTube to build up enough of an audience to get people to sign up to my courses. And funnily enough, it's not necessary to have a big audience. So, not at all. I would encourage each and every one of you not to look at the numbers at all. Um, Especially, it because you once you start doing this, there's this dictum in academia which goes publish or perish. So you've got to publish or you perish. Now, some young academics might see the social media platforms as a way out where they could publish their work and continue to live quote unquote an intellectual life. But of course, here you've got a similar problem, which is if um, you you can fall into the same trap. So you could also um, just having to publish or you perish. So you become a slave to the algorithm. I remember recording a video very early on, I think around February of 2019, which is basically just me barking into my iPhone on Nietzsche's eternal recurrence. It's a 10-minute video, so it's for some, but this is me just ranting for 10 minutes. There's no editing in the audio. There's no, I didn't cut anything out, but it was eloquent enough, and I just used some stock images that were free to use and published this video. And after some time, for some reason, this got picked up by the algorithm, and this to this day is the so-called most viewed video on this channel, which by comparison with other channels is still ridiculous. It's about 30,000 views or something. But I could have started then to optimize for that kind of content, you see, and then you're in the trap already. So I'm mentioning all of this because I know, given that I've now been running my own academy for the past, well, this is our fifth year. So for the past 4 years, since March 2020, we've had about 500 people enrolled. Not all of them, obviously, in the seminars that we offer, but quite a few of them. And so I got to talk with many of them, and quite a few of them do actually have some sort of intellectual project on the side that they do want to continue. And I often tell them, you focus on one medium and try and get really good at it, but don't worry so much about the technical side of things. You can invest loads of money in all, microphones and light. There's a light here that's not cheap, etc. Yes, that's important, but not in the beginning, and especially never get sucked into the content mill. It's not about creating or generating content. It's about doing the work and using the tools that are now available to us to self-publish that uh, can, so that your creativity is enhanced by it. That's an enhancement. If all you do is regurgitate the 5,000 video um, on Stoic philosophy for everyday life. This is how when you have your cereal in the morning, you too can benefit from Mark Aurelius. There's this hideous new thing. Did you see that? Uh, which I saw on Twitter. It's called imprint, and I hate it. It's the slogan is like Duolingo but for philosophy. So, well, okay. Don't use it. If you use it, unsubscribe from this channel immediately. You are hereby morally banned. And oh, this is very nice. Simon not only alerted me to the fact that my microphone was switched off for some reason, but also has sent me a super chat. So thank you very much indeed, Simon. Just to mention this again, if you'd like to support the work on this channel, etc., or in general, please do send a super chat now or support it in any other way. I'll read super chats and comments at the end. So I started out, and then you have to figure out sort of what is it even that you're doing with, because the internet is a strange place still. And so I used this platform in the beginnings simply as, because as when you lecture, you're presenting something to an audience. So obviously that's, you don't have to envision an audience is right there in front of you. Your students are right there. But at least with the video and good audio, you can in a way imitate that situation, and you lecture potentially to hundreds of people that wouldn't be able to hear what you have to say. And so I've also tried to bring in some of my former professors, like my supervisor for my PhD, or Ken Cheems, for example, who was uh, who taught Nietzsche for many decades, for example, at Berkeley, but before that at Yale. And so Ken also taught a seminar last year at Halcyon. And so I wanted to, in some ways, also give back what I was able to learn from my teachers, and but also maybe show people who would never have heard of them, perhaps without YouTube, etc., and other platforms, that they are out there, and there is really good work being done in the inside academia, despite all the criticisms that we may have. But also, there's a certain, with the dialogues that we've been having over the years now on this channel and other channels, there's a there's a the freedom that comes with it is very uh, enthralling and exciting. But it also, I think, one of the issues that you can see online is that there's too much of a tendency, um, to uh, to perhaps to just agree with everyone, and there's not enough disagreement, but also because of the speed of the conversations. Sometimes it's it's you know uh, there, perhaps there's almost too much agreement, so that can be a bit of a downside of that medium. I find there's not enough resistance. You see, when you're in a room with people, you can. I gave a talk in Cambridge. You could see physically what is. Some people were very taken by it in a good way, and others were perhaps not so much. And I was recently in Linz, where something, of course, similar happened. It was a talk on Heidegger and technology. So that, of course, that's in a sense lacking. I have to say that when we do our Zoom seminars, that is pretty close to the real thing. Sometimes can even be better, because you come in from where you are and where you want to be, and you get to meet people you would never have been able to meet without the internet. So what we've seen now over the years is people finding each other that would not uh, have met and would not have found that they are, there's someone else out there with similar or the same interests. Now, obviously, the overall um, future goal of this is to have at some point a physical location, um, either somewhere in the Mediterranean, and there are other people who do this, or London is probably, given the real estate situation, uh, an impossibility, except if some extremely wealthy individual is willing to step up and spend an insane amount of money. But as you probably can gather, once that happens, you begin to be beholden to someone else. So that is never in the interest of philosophy or the arts in general. So we'd like to keep it independent here. By the way, I read a book in the run up to becoming independent. I don't like the word independent at all. I don't remember, unfortunately, the author, but it was on the independent thinkers of the Enlightenment, and it was um, Voltaire who said, Voltaire, who was not entirely poor. It was Voltaire who said that many of his contemporaries wanted to become the most independent men, and in doing so, the independent men of letters, and in doing so, they 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 begged for money. Let's put it very bluntly, a bit too much, and so they became the most dependent ones. That is something you can see, which is also why perhaps dialectically inscribed in the word independent. So I like to think of myself as a free scholar, or a Nietzschean free spirit, perhaps. So uh, I well, how did everything else continue? Well, in 2019, I continued to put out videos and publish them uh, sporadically, to be honest. Again, entirely overwhelmed with the technology stuff side of things. What kind of camera should I use? That really took me about 3 or 4 years to figure that one out. Which even which just which lens to buy. Um, and but thanks to I almost have to say thanks to the lockdowns in March 2020, I took the plunge and started offering a course on leisure with dignity. So at the time when the world was ending or taking a bit of a pause, I offered this course here, which you can see here from on the inside: Leisure with Dignity, Plato, Aristotle, Heidegger, Russell, Nietzsche. By the way, if you'd like to read some Plato, Aristotle, Heidegger, Russell, Nietzsche, and Wilhelm von Humboldt as well, and Joseph Pieper, I should mention Joseph Pieper on Total Work, which you can find here, then leisurely reading this summer, then the course is available for enrollment on the Halcyon page, which I can share with you in a second. And it is one of the best ways to support the work is to enroll. So what we did in this course was, well, we start off with Plato and Aristotle on leisure. In Plato we read the Critias dialogue, which is a dialogue on where Plato tries to provide his his own origin story or origin myth for Athens in opposition to its arch nemesis Atlantis. Atlantis that always thinks it's an unfinished dialogue. At least we don't have all of it, but there's a substantial moment in the beginning of the dialogue where Plato points out that Athens really becomes Athens in the moment when scolaire, which we translate as leisure, arrives in the midst of the Athenians. In their mind, their nous begins to be redirected. And Aristotle continues this project, but also introduces a certain dialectic. We then continue in this course with Cicero, Otium cum dignitate. Um, I will at some point teach this course again and also add Seneca, but especially with Cicero, I think it's a more astonishing view of Otium, insofar as he allows for a dignitas which has to be earned in office for the Romans, to be earned also in Otium. So that is how we focus on leisure in antiquity, and then we go on to Wilhelm von Humboldt in the university ideal, Nietzsche's uncanny real work. So that's a bit of Nietzsche's critique of economics. Bertrand Russell's In Praise of Idleness, Heidegger und Gelassenheit, Joseph Pieper on Total Work, also a very important essay, Muße und Kult in German. I think it is the base leisure as the basis of civilization, or the basis of culture is the English title. A book that comes highly recommended. So maybe this summer you'd like to spend a few weeks thinking about how to be idle, how to be in leisure with dignity. So here we are back again. As I said, if there are, well, John Vervecchi, I won't expect a super chat. Thank you very much. I will call him again Professor John Vervecchi, which I've now done twice. John, thank you for your support. I met John in 2019, quite towards the end of 2019, and I John was we were introduced by Guy Sengsok, who was already in touch with me and with John. I think almost at the same time. So Guy thankfully uh, connected us, and I think I met Guy also via YouTube. So that's also something else I would encourage people to do if you have any sort of project. It's not about numbers and about insane growth. How many thousands of followers can I add in a month or in a day or in one in a year or anything? But it's more about who can you meet, who can you relate to, and you might be surprised who you end up meeting with 50 subscribers. Don't make yourself too available. Be a bit careful. But if you have a contact form or maybe an email address that's just for that, uh, do make that available to people so they can reach out to you, or a Patreon or something else. So very grateful also to Guy Sangstock for his work and for the many hours of dialoguing with him, and which was a sort of a liberation, you could almost say, after the many years in academia, where you do get the sense that s- some people are listening, but for the most part, given also just the structural reasons for this, no one can really, and I mean can really listen. It's really able to take the time and listen. Um, but John and I had a first recorded conversation, and at some point in I think February or March of 2020, just before the world ended, and after then 2 years of offering courses, or about 2 years, so uh, I asked John to teach our first course, and now we just finished his second course. So John has been offering two courses now at Halcyon. Maybe I can show you them. I don't know. They should be here. So the first one was Beyond Nihilism, which is 1 second, which is a continuation, really, a philosophical continuation of the Meaning Crisis lecture series. So if you're interested in that, and also interested in supporting John's work and his gazillion hours of free content he puts out, and my work as well, then maybe this is something uh, you'd like to read this summer. So we're reading Tillich for the first two lectures, then Stanley Rosen for the next two, followed by uh, Nishitani's Religion and Nothingness, and we end on DC Schindler. So, but I say we, that's the royal we. Obviously, this is John's course. And so there are 8 lectures in total. It looks as though John did go overtime quite often. That's 71 minutes. Jesus. So yeah, these are not available uh, anywhere else. If you'd like to learn more about how John looks at the meaning crisis philosophically, then maybe this course is for you. So thank you very much, John, and everyone else who's listening. I see a couple people saying that they've been here since the beginning. You know, that's great. Leave comments. I do uh, make an effort to try and at least read all of them and respond to most of them, if possible. Given you actually YouTube doesn't even show you all the comments all the time, so that's something that happens as well. But well, it's also not a perfect tool, obviously. By the way, if you're interested, just to look at the homepage for Halcyon, it's this one here. And maybe if you wonder about the name Halcyon, the spelling is perhaps a strange one. It's the I use the basically German or Greek spelling even with the kappa, not the English spelling with the C, because halcyon has, as you know, you speak of halcyon days in English, so that has that connotation, and I wanted to separate it from this. And I've had the idea for a project named Halcyon for the better part of at now well, at the time, for about 10 years. So in 2010, I went through, as everyone does, a long phase of uh, reading, an intense time of reading Nietzsche. And Nietzsche speaks at a few places around in the later works, and his case against Wagner, or contra Wagner, and also in, I think, in the Antichrist as well, or at least in Ecce Homo, I believe. He speaks of the halcyon or halcyonic sound or melody, which is to him the melody of a coming future that comes when, well, after the tempest. So the iceberg, the kingfisher, is able to breed, is also obviously is a female principle here in play, is able to breed and give new life during winter solstice when, well, when the sea is still, if only for a moment, but the next storms are about to come. So during these about 14 days, this tiny little bird is able to give new life. And I had been thinking about um, perhaps trying, starting sort of magazine or journal. There was the initial idea in about 2010, 2011, as you may know. Uh, Goethe, for example, and others did have, or the Schlegel brothers, for example, did have journals or sort of, um, yeah, what we would perhaps refer to as academic journals or similar. Um, and that was the initial idea that really never, though, um, it took off. Did, I did have another blog that was it did have some success at some point. It was more cultural critique, and but it is, again, you're back to, with the issue of the content mill, where you're having to create content, and there does come a point when you do need to eat. So it was difficult to monetize, but also there was I had, work with PhD, and before that my master's at King's. So maybe for people who don't know this, I studied economics, philosophy, and political science at the Free University of Bolzano in Italy. The university is trilingual. I then went to, for a year, I went to the University of Washington in Seattle, where I read some more philosophy and took some additional economics classes. After that, I wrote a very long thesis for my Italian bachelor's. I'm a dottore dell'economia in Italy, with a meaningless title, but uh, if I move to Italy, I'd be a double doctor, which is ironic. But I wrote an extremely long uh, thesis on Hayek. It's half. It's a bachelor's thesis, but it's half the length of a British PhD, if you can believe it. So, uh, but after that, I went to uh, London, to King's College London, where I did an MA, which is usually um, 1 year, but I did it part time to take more time. I focused on Kant in my MA thesis, on his theory of radical evil, and I focused on Nietzsche and Kant some more, and a bit of Indian philosophy actually, and aesthetics and Heidegger for my other modules at King's. And during this time, I became aware of Warwick. I hadn't planned on staying in the UK, but I found out about Miguel de Bestegui at Warwick University, so I applied with Miguel. This was the only application I ever sent for a PhD. I am very grateful that he accepted very quickly my application, and so did Warwick as well. So I spent about 4 years or 3 years perhaps, in the English countryside, and am an autodidact when it comes to Heidegger. I never taken any Heidegger classes before my PhD. I just read everything myself, and I wrote this tiny book here that I also never talk about. So if it's published by Springer, which is a good publisher, but a bit expensive. Sometimes you can find it cheaper on Amazon for whatever reason. So Heidegger on Death and Being. But you could also just, if I may say so, you could also just take the Heidegger on Death and Being course, which is a summary and exegesis of the most important aspects and dimensions of Heidegger's thoughts based on this book. So maybe that's something you'd like to do this summer. Who knows? But anyway, so the name Halcyon, I'd read this quote now from Nietzsche. What is truly noble about a work or a human being is the moment when their sea is smooth and they have found halcyon self sufficiency. But there are other quotes by Nietzsche, which perhaps um, you, you know, but if you don't know, read up on those. So this is the homepage of Halcyon. Do take a look around here. You can also find a list of all of our courses so far. So yeah, we began with a course on leisure with dignity, continued with a course on Heidegger on death and being, and ended the first year with a course on Nietzsche. Thus spoke Nietzsche, and I might teach Nietzsche again next year. I haven't decided yet what to teach next year. I'm going back and forth between a course on Paideia or something on Nietzsche. I will decide spontaneously, but that also is what the free academy affords you, is that we don't have to decide yet. John and Vicky and I might do a course on Heidegger and Plato next year, if the gods mean well, the weather gods, and and this was born out of the course that John taught this year, which was ultimate reality. So this is, what's more important than gaining followers and looking at numbers and making sure that, because YouTube bombards you with with all sorts of analytics, and that you could be earning this much more, you could be doing this to gain more audience retention, or whatever they call it. So there's an entire, I don't know, an entire half the, if you go into your YouTube studio, I won't show this to you now, but what you can see is basically, this is how you improve this is how you improve this. Well, I think once you start doing that, then I could have just stayed in academia and taken a monthly paycheck and publish or perish, because that's more stable. There's probably more prestige, and so you actually do get a pension at some point, at least. That's so. Anyways, but oh, thank you very much, Albert. I very much appreciate your work, Philomathes, Polymathes. Thank you. uh, and yeah, Polytropon maybe also Polytropon. Um, I Yeah, Albert has been coming since last year. I think the first seminar you took was on Nietzsche with Ken Cheems, Nietzsche and the Death of God. And Albert then continued on with a course by Sebastian Ostrich on Spengler, Oswald Spengler, The Decline of the West, which is such a misguiding translation, really. It should be more like the going down of the land of the evening. Der Untergang des Abendlandes sounds much more as what Spengler, I think, had in mind. And that was about an 8-week course that Sebastian put together for us. Sebastian uh, was a philosophy professor, but then quit. He's now in journalism, and he also wrote a book on Hegel. That was, he did teach a course. We also started offering courses in different languages, so I might actually be offering, for those of you who speak German or are in Germany, or given the time zone, I might be offering at least a short course on Heidegger or so in German this fall, maybe a weekend or something like this. But as I mentioned before, what I want to do is I want to at some point have a physical location, have a proper academy, maybe somewhere in the Mediterranean. Italy is a great country for this. So might be Greece, even though I don't know Greece that well, but for a select group of people who've been coming for many years to the courses, and it's a men's only retreat, at least in the first instance. We are going to Athens this October for 4 days. So we will be reading Plato and Aristotle and a bit of Homer, Parmenides, Heraclitus. We'll go to the Acropolis, we'll go to the Lyceum, we'll go to the ancient Agora of Athens, and also be having a view of the view of the Acropolis from my terrace. And by the way, so later this year, we will end the year with a long course on Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. For those of you who took my course on Plato um, earlier this year, this is how we began the year on the Republic, and Plato's notion of the idea of the good is what almost you could say um, sparks for Aristotle the Nicomachean Ethics, insofar as it is for him to abstract. And we will begin that course. I will mention this again when we start opening enrollment, but the course will begin a bit differently than how we've done it so far. We will begin without reading anything of Aristotle, but with an introduction to a Greek way of thinking. So I will try and get across by words like oidaimonia, ethos, nous, scolaire, what it means to think in a Greek manner. This is something that you can learn when you learn ancient Greek and begin to have a feeling for the language, and also to be able to play with the words in the way that they do, and to hear something else in the words that just the initial translation gives you. For example, scolaire as leisure is yeah is fine, but leisure comes from the French and means basically license. So it's licensed free time from work. So it is already a deeply industrialistic, capitalistic notion, the notion of leisure. Scolaire means something else. It comes from echein, to have and to hold, to maintain, to find a hold and a stance, a ground to stand on. By the way, in this way, it's related to echein, but also to ethos. Right? If we hear the word ethics and we think there's an ethics code and we go by these ethics, it cuts a bit deeper. Ethics can also mean character, etching your character, etc. So that's how we will begin the Aristotle course, which is set to begin on the 12th of October, which is a Saturday, but more on that later. So, well, yeah, I'd like to thank each and every one of you again. Do support the work on this channel in any way you can. This could be by, as I said, sending a super chat or using any of the links provided to sign up for a course, or maybe use the Buy Me a Coffee website. or PayPal, etc., Substack. All of this is great, but also leave comments, share the videos. And I never say this, but it does help if you actually not just subscribe, but also click this button that you get alerted to live streams, etc. Uh, and anything, I read your comments, and sometimes they lead to something. So last year, someone wrote under my Humboldt video, "This should be a book. Someone should write a book about this." And I am working on this book, and this will be part of what we will put out next year. It's taking me longer because I'm not just uh, teaching and writing; I'm also running a business, and I had to teach all of that myself as well. I had zero business experience 5 years ago, and so here we are, a few years later, and it's going all right. So I wanted to thank also everyone involved with Halcyon so far, uh, wherever you are now, and some of us are still with Halcyon. We currently have Thomas Chokin, for example, teaching a course on Plato on beauty and virtue. Thomas was a student once, so that's how I know Thomas. Thomas is also a university professor, so he does have quite a bit of experience teaching. Um, so I think I've said my piece. I don't know if you have any more questions via super chats, then I'd be happy to respond to them. Uh, in the meantime, I say it again: support the work by buying a course or sharing the videos, etc., with others and leaving comments. And well, thank you all very much.